It's Rick and Sasha with George Wilborn. The country is still mourning the loss of Chadwick Boseman. He brought us Jackie Robinson. He brought us James Brown, Thurgood Marshall. He brought us T'Challa in Wakanda Forever. So many movies. Had you seen Jackie Robinson, Sasha?
The kids hadn't seen the movie, so we sat down and got some food and watched it together. So it was just great seeing him on screen. Oh, but it breaks my heart, Lord.
Yeah. You know, after he passed, everybody was shocked. Then it made so much sense to everyone why he lost weight. And the sad part about it is that people trolled him so much. They didn't understand why he lost weight. They were saying all sorts of stuff. But he kept this thing private.
Yeah.
That's a good thing, and that's a bad thing, because oftentimes when we know something is going on with us, we don't get checked. Not saying that he didn't do that, but that's what we do as a black community. But here to talk about it and, you know, what happened to Chadwick Boseman. He passed of colorectal cancer. We've got Dr. Gary Richter with us. Doctor, how are you?
Good morning.
Oh, I'm good. Thank you. Good morning.
Good.
Let me tell you something. He's been connected everywhere. Went to University of Pennsylvania, Howard University in Washington, D.C. Many awards behind your name. Before we start, I want to ask you the difference. What is the difference between a oncologist, and if I pronounce this wrong, please correct me, gastroenterologist?
Yes. Well, a oncologist is an individual that takes care of patients that have specific cancers. It's when a patient gets diagnosed with the cancer, then they will see a oncologist who will then decide what therapy is offered for that patient at that particular time with that particular diagnosis. And, you know, a lot of them are specifically deal with specific cancers, but they deal with the patient once the cancer is identified. A gastroenterologist basically is an individual that is looking and screening and trying to prevent colon cancer and colon polyps. Wow. And so our mission here is to get more people screened.
You know, sadly, in the wake of Chadwick Boseman's death, we're talking about colon cancer because it does affect the black community. And we got more of Dr. Richter coming up. It is Rick and Sasha with George Wilborn. It's Rick and Sasha with George Wilborn inside the party poll at 888-909-1514, talking about the death of actor Chadwick Boseman. He passed from colon cancer. We've got Dr. Gary Richter on the phone right now.
You know, this is a very sad moment when you think about it, a young individual. But what we've seen as a gastroenterologist is that colon cancer is getting in a younger mode. We used to say, when first screening started, 50 to 70, we recognized that in Black Americans, that risk was much higher and started at an earlier rate at the age of 45. So for Black Americans, we always have offered to do colon screening at the age of 45 because all colon cancers begin as a polyp, which is a growth in the lining of the bowel. If you don't do anything about it, that's how it goes to cancer. Now, fast forward to this situation. It's very unusual for someone younger, but the numbers are showing, even though the total number of cases are not equal to the older individuals, we're seeing a particular rise in younger individuals getting colon cancer. And there's a lot of possible reasons for that, but it suggests that if you have any symptoms, any bleeding, or any change in bowel habits, you should get yourself checked to make certain that you don't have a polyp or a growth or a cancer.
Doc, you said there are a bunch of reasons. What are some of the causes of colon cancer?
Here's the thing. With colon cancer, these are spontaneous mutations of the chromosomes lining the cells, in the cells lining the colon. And they start to take their own identity and go into a polyp and then into a cancer. Now, there's a lot of different reasons that happens. Probably when you were younger, a lot of people used to say you are what you eat. Right? So I see a patient, I talk to him about the data that's out there, and diet and exercise are the most important things. So there's a lot of possibilities in research-wise. There's things that we eat alter our intestinal flora, and it goes into what we call the microbiome. How we digest our food, probably in our microbiome, probably has a key role in which individuals get colon cancers. And so your diet is very important. If you eat a lot of red meat and processed food, the World Health Organization has come out and said these are risk factors for cancer. You should not really do that.
So, Dr. Richter, what do you mostly educate your people on? Because I know they have a whole bunch of questions about colon cancer. Let's talk about that when we come right back. It is Rick and Sasha with George Wilborn. It's Rick and Sasha with George Wilborn. We're talking about the death of actor Chadwick Boseman, who passed from colon cancer. My mom passed from the same thing. So when I heard this story, it hit me like a ton of bricks. And I know there's so many people out there that's dealing with it. We need to have these discussions. And our guest to educate us a little bit more is Dr. Gary Richter.
So my education to all my patients when they come into me is that they need to eat a clean diet, a lot of fresh fruits and vegetables, at least if you're a man, 38 grams of fiber. If you're a woman, 25 grams of fiber. Make sure your vitamin D level is normal because that improves your outcome. And exercise. Obesity is a possible risk factor as well. So exercising also helps to reduce the risk of cancers in general.
Dr. Richter and Rick, I got up this morning, I went to my husband and I said, hey, we received something in the mail for you to do a colon cancer screening. Did you do it? It's something you do at home and you mail it back, and he hadn't done it. I found it this morning. This was back in May. What is it about our men? They will not take these tests.
I'm not really sure, but when I look at my practice, the majority of the patients, the women are going to get checked. They advocate for their husbands to get checked. And in fact, most of the men that are coming in is because their wives have sent them in to get colon cancer, or a good friend has sent them in. Sometimes people just have intuitions and will come in. But men in general, first of all, they don't like the colonoscopy because you have to go through the rectum. That's it. I mean,
Doc,
that people don't.
Doc, we don't like it. It's not a good feeling. I mean, George was telling me about his last experience.
Wait a minute. Hey, Doc, listen. Hey, Doc, let me
talk about that.
Listen, let me say, I am over 50. I believe I was 48 when I got my last test, and Rick is right. It was uncomfortable, and the doctor used the right gloves for me, but the doctor didn't use the right gloves for when he was examining Rick.
Yeah, I'm still learning from that experience, though.
I told him the doctor should not have gloves with the fingers cut out. They should have. He should.
Oh my God!
But it is so important, though, and I felt so much better. I'm going to be honest, and to all the men that's listening to us, yes, it's anxiety that's attached to it, Sasha, and in our community, especially. I'll even go so far to say that for whatever reason. But I felt such a level of relief. Please tell your husband that after he does it, it's just going to be just a feeling that he's going to have. At least I got that done. And I can't even explain the level of relief I had after those results came back, and I knew I got that done. Right. And the uncomfortableness was way gone.
Right now, your husband continues to go back every week.
Stop it! We got a problem. We have a problem.
Doctor, you check one more time. It's a problem.
Well, just so you know, I told him today that we're taking care of it. I don't care what he says because I need him to be alive. And I just am in shock that Chad was so young. You know, he's in his late 30s when he found out, and he has passed away in his early 40s. So now they always say now 45 to check, but that has to be changing, right, Dr. Richter? It's got to be way earlier for us.
What is the age? All right, so get your pens and paper, y'all. We're talking to Dr. Gary Richter. We got more of him coming up. We're talking about colon cancer, y'all, and cancer itself, so you all can learn a lot. We got more coming up. It's Rick and Sasha with George Wilborn. It's Rick and Sasha with George Wilborn. We're talking about colon cancer with Dr. Gary Richter in wake of the death of Chadwick Boseman, who passed from colon cancer at the age of 43 years old. You know, he played Black Panther, and, you know, he discussed how he just would keep on pushing, but he never gave us an inkling that he was sick. He was only 43. He was young, Dr. Richter.
That's it. You know, you don't expect somebody in their 30s. Now, there are alarm signs if you have a family history of colon cancer, colon polyp, or a personal history of polyp. But I can give you anecdotal cases where, you know, I've had individuals come in, they sound like they did that hemorrhoids, they're bleeding. They come in, we do a colonoscopy, and they have a huge polyp.
Right.
I tell them at that moment that whoever sent you, and a lot of times they come on their own, save their lives, because if you can get a polyp and remove it, you have saved them from getting a cancer.
Right.
Put them on track to be surveilled on a regular basis. And let me just say this, is that you don't have a lot of discomfort with the exam, because with our exam, we do give you sedation. We use propofol. So most patients don't even realize the fact that they've had the exam. Most men, once they have it, are really surprised because they don't really have as much discomfort. Years ago, we used to just give a little bit of medicine and try to do the exam, but now it's totally different. You have to prepare yourself for the exam. But it's a very valuable examination. It saves lives. There are studies out showing that the number of cases and the mortality associated with colon cancers has significantly reduced by doing colorectal cancer screening. So this is the only screening examination that you can reduce the incidence of the cancer you're screening for.
Doc, when it comes to diet, what food do you recommend that people absolutely stay away from? Because, too much of any one good thing could be bad for you also.
Right.
But what do you recommend people stay away from?
Well, I tell my patients if they're eating out, they're probably not eating good because you're eating a lot of foods high in fat, and that's a risk factor there. But you have to eat a clean diet, you need to reduce the amount of processed food, which is difficult. But there are certain processed foods that were identified by the World Health Organization. That was lunch meat, sausages, especially the things high in nitrates, hot dogs. Those,
I just read that.
Wow. Hot dogs?
Yeah, Labor Day, no more
all
hot
that
dogs.
processed food just is
Wow.
horrible. Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Doc. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and red meat as well. Reducing the amount of red meat. Now, everybody's different. Your genetics play a significant role.
Right.
Everybody's different. You might be able to eat red meat 2-3 times a week. I think that's the recommendation, that you shouldn't eat more than 2-3 times a week. But everybody's different. It depends on your genetic composition as well.
Yeah.
Does it help? I'm having a brain freeze on what you call it. When you go and have your colon cleaned out, what do they call that, guys?
Colon cleanser. I get this question all the time.
No, is it colon cleanser?
It's a colon cleanser.
Okay.
Well, they do a colonic irrigation.
That's what I'm talking about, a colonic. Thank you.
That's what it is.
Yeah,
a colonic
so-
is a colon.
I know, but I didn't know what the name was, so it was a colonic. Is it healthy
It's a
to
booty
get
wash.
Well, is it healthy to do that once a month?
Well, let me just say this. What is healthy is for you to eat the right food.
Right.
And evacuate on a regular basis. Well, to me, now I have friends that have done colonic irrigation, say they felt better afterwards. But you have to do something on a consistent basis.
Sure.
It's not going to reduce the incidence of colon cancer. I don't think it has any benefits except for some people feel better.
Thank you, Doc, because I'm telling you, I had one years ago, and let me tell you, let me say this. I've had one colonic in my whole life, and whatever's in there going to have to stay if I got to get it out like that. I'm going to tell you that right now. All right?
It's a little uncomfortable.
That was a violation. I had to talk to my pastor. When I left right from the doctor's office to my pastor's house.
Wait, see, George, I mean, you didn't try the aqua cleanser, man, when they put the water up there, man, just let everything.
That is, they did that.
They did the water. That's what it is. Yeah.
Well, first of all, they had to find the smallest apparatus they could find just to make this happen for me.
Right.
So no.
You saw that coming. You was like, nah, not today.
I ain't gonna be able to do that. My stomach don't even hurt no more.
Now, Doc, we know fiber is important, as you said earlier. I take Benefiber often. How important is that? Do you recommend that?
I do recommend that. I mean, if you are unable to eat adequate amounts of fiber, then you can take it orally. That's usually psyllium husk, which is a natural fiber supplement. What you have to watch out for, if it has different stimulants in it, those are not so good for you, like Senna or Cascara. These are products that basically make you go to the bathroom, and they can affect the way your colon contracts.
Gotcha.
I usually suggest get the regular Benefiber or without any supplements or stimulants.
Gotcha.
Dr. Richter, once you start the process and you've gone in for your testing, how often do you go after that? Is it every year, every 18 months? What is it?
Dr. Richter, answer that when we come back, okay? It's Rick and Sasha with George Wilborn. It's Rick and Sasha with George Wilborn. We're talking to Dr. Richter about colon cancer. That is the very thing that Chadwick Boseman, the actor who plays T'Challa in Black Panther, died of. Now, Sasha, just before the break, Dr. Richter, she was asking how often should you go back and get a colonoscopy?
So yearly, there's been studies that have been out there. I usually follow people up yearly with stool hemoculture. Because here's the thing. You can have real small polyps. They're called serrated polyps. So these polyps can go on to a cancer very quickly, and they're very hard to see. You're not going to pick those up on DNA testing at the stool. And these, to make sure that you don't have anything, yearly you get your stools checked for blood. I consider most patients of color in my practice, and the insurance carriers have acquiesced, a high risk. So in 5 to 7 years, because that's the science, I repeat a colonoscopy if they don't have a polyp. The recommendation is 10 years. I just think that's just, for me, that just seems too long for me. I get concerned about it.
So you said 5 to 7, Doc? 5
to 7 years. If you have a polyp, most people are following you up, especially if you have 2 to 3 polyps in 3 years.
Right.
And depending on what the nature of the polyp is, if it has atypical features, if it's large. Now, keep in mind, some of the polyps you cannot remove. They can be so large you can't remove, or they infiltrate the wall because they have cancer in it.
Right.
Those polyps have to be resected surgically. If you have a polyp resected surgically, then repeat it in a year. Yeah.
Right.
Doc, if a man finds blood in his stool, what could that mean?
Well, if you have blood in your stool, there's something in your intestines that's losing blood. Now, here's the thing. It could be from the stomach, but the rule of thumb is you got to make sure there's nothing in your colon. You got to make sure there's no polyp or growth or any abnormality in your colon. It could be an ulcer. It could be related to aspirin or Motrin or other things. But you start with your colon. If that's negative, then you look in the stomach. You're not supposed to have blood in your bowels. There's a reason for it, so you have to find out why. You shouldn't walk around and somebody says, well, they didn't see anything. So you got to figure out, well, why do I have blood in my bowels? Then someone has to follow that up because there's a reason for it.
Dr. Gary Richter, he's from the Emory University Affiliated Hospitals. Thank you so much. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Rick, I'll meet you at the doctor. Come on, let's go.
Please go and take Kevin with you.
Everybody